My name is David Kaufer. I'm a professor of English at Carnegie Mellon, and I'm here today to talk to you about my digital humanities project, DocuScope, which is done for computer support for close reading and textual analysis in the digital humanities. So the first question is, what is DocuScope? Well, the first thing I want to say, it's a long-term project over 20 years that I've been doing with Suguru Shizaki and Kari Shizaki. It's an English digital dictionary and visualization environment that tags text for the variety of experiences a writer can create for a reader in a text. So, for example, at a high level, writers can create entities on the page for a reader like human characters, narrative action, private information, public information, instructions, descriptions, reasoning, strategies, positive and negative sentiment, and much more. DocuScope captures fine interpretive variation. So, for example, the variations on the word I in English, I as self-reference when it's standalone. But if you say I know, that indicates a little bit of confidence and that you have knowledge of what you're talking about. I have to do chores today indicate that maybe you are not so excited to do it and you have some reluctance. And I get to do chores today maybe actually suggests you have some eagerness about doing those chores. We take a developmental rhetorical approach to language. So we assume that meaning in language is isolated less in individual words than in streams of words, and that what a word means is the contribution it makes to the meaning of all the streams it flows in. So to make this a little bit more concrete, single words in different company take on different interpretations. So look at the word swore. If you say, I swore at you, it means I could be mad at you. If I swore by you, I'm loyal to you. And if I swore to you, I made you a promise. So swear takes on different meanings based upon the streams at which it flows. Meanings in DocuScope are organized as a thesaural ocean of cross-flowing and overlapping semantic streams. Currently in DocuScope's database, there are approaching 44,000 semantic stream classes and over 70 million unique English patterns. So let's suppose we were looking to find out all the ways a writer of English can capture the experience of something being scrumptious, meaning it tastes good. We'd point to the description section of the dictionary because if something tastes good, it's part of how you would describe the world, and work our way down to describing tastes of the palate, and then further down to positive palate tastes until we get to scrumptious. So here's how a DocuScope interface looks. You'd see on the left there are things called clusters and dimensions, and it would be highlighting description. You see that blue bar on the left. And so we want to describe something, and then we'd want to describe an experience, and that experience would have to do not with sound or sight or touch, but with taste, because we'd want scrumptious. And so we go further, and we can see on the left-hand side, we actually see that we're looking at streams of how things can taste, and then taste with the palate, not expensive taste, but it's palate taste. And then to the middle, we'd see that we're hitting down into positive taste of the palate. And then the right-hand side, we get to that thing called scrumptious. So we're actually just looking at large streams flowing into smaller streams until we get to the individual words and phrases. So this is background, but what can researchers do with this sort of dictionary? Well, let's turn now to our student researchers of the hour, Bayan El-Tawil and Fatima Hubail of Hamad bin Khalid University in Doha, where I sometimes teach, and who used the DocuScope tool to answer an important research question about comparative media coverage. Do different news agencies vary in the way they cover an ongoing news event? What follows is the first page of their research report. And their title of their report was Gaza Between Crisis and War, an Assessment of Representation Across Fox News and Al Jazeera. And these are pictures of our researchers and contact information if you want to learn more about the research they did with DocuScope. The focus of Bayan and Fatima's study, their study focused on the way in which Gaza was portrayed across Fox News and Al Jazeera during the Israeli-Gaza conflict of 2014. Did the media report on Gaza similarly or differently? Well, they looked at a corpus of 50 Fox News articles and 50 Al Jazeera articles between July 8, 2014 and September 9, 2014. And Bayan and Fatima attempted to show whether the journalistic style and focus varied systematically across these news organizations. They could read these 100 texts serially, and they should at some point, but their understanding of differences would likely be vague and not well substantiated because our reading brain tires easily. With digital methods, the evidence is more consistent and precise and becomes more so as samples grow. It's hard to beat statistics to find precise structure in large volumes of text, and it's hard to beat the human reading brain to confirm, refine, and qualify that structure once discovered. So the data and methods that Bayan and Fatima used, the corpus of 100 news articles were written and distributed through 2 news agencies. They used the DocuScope tool to tag the corpus for journalistic style and focus. And they used a statistical package to analyze the tags to see if they distinguished the news agencies. And the statistics Bayan and Fatima used were factor analysis and MANOVA, which are 2 very common multivariate techniques. Their results came in this important factor, which distinguished Fox News and Al Jazeera. Positive scores, and these are the scores that don't have the negative in front of them, they indicate Fox's reporting because Fox focused on conversations that were interactive, having to do with future strategy. And negative scores describe Al Jazeera's reporting because Al Jazeera focused on updates that are descriptive and on the ground and with more academic political ideological terms. A visualization of their results indicated that you can see Al Jazeera and Fox News. Every one of those boxes is a text, is an article from these news agencies. The blue dots represent Al Jazeera. The red dots represent Fox. You can see Al Jazeera articles. The blue dots dominate the left axis of the graph. And Fox articles, the red dots dominate the right axis. The more left, the more the reporting focuses on Gazan suffering on the ground from Israeli bombing. And the more right, the more the reporting focuses on Israeli military strategy behind the lines. Okay, the blue and reds are not perfectly separated, however, and this adds exception, nuance, and refinement to the main statistical trends that Bayan and Fatima had to account for. So you can see from this graph that they assumed that most of the red was talking about Israel behind the lines, and the blue is talking about Gazan suffering. But reading post hoc to confirm, refine, and qualify, once Bayan and Fatima had the statistical big picture, Once they had the statistical big picture, they went back and read the source text selectively to better understand, confirm, refine, and qualify their findings. So reading post hoc, Bayan and Fatima discovered that Al Jazeera's coverage was more balanced than they originally understood. So Bayan and Fatima found that Al Jazeera did focus on casualties more than Fox, but that Al Jazeera reported Israeli casualties as well, which is what the statistics really didn't see as well as their human reading brain could see. And so they write, the reporting from Al Jazeera was not limited to destruction on the Palestinian side, but also focused on the impact that the conflict war had on the Israeli side. In addition, the references made by Al Jazeera corroborated statements with statistics specifically addressing the number of people killed and wounded on both Gaza and on the Israeli side. So what they learned is that Al Jazeera was much more interested in the material consequences of war and not simply on war strategy from 30,000 feet in the air. Reading post hoc, Bayan and Fatima also discovered that Fox's coverage was more stereotypical than they had originally understood. They found that Fox's coverage was more distance from the carnage and sometimes more exonerating. And they also found Fox committing stereotypes that weren't apparent from the statistical findings. And they write, throughout the articles, we see the unification of the USA and Israel as one party, while Hamas and Gazans are used interchangeably, further implying that all Gazans could legitimately be treated as combatants and not civilians. And lastly, claims by Hamas are almost always followed by quotation marks and a skeptical attitude that repeatedly calls into question the group's moral legitimacy as a political organization. So they found some very major results, big results, and they wrote a very nice paper and did some research that they are circulating in conferences and for future publication. So that's what you can do with DocuScope, at least an example of the kind of research you can do with it. And I just want to now close with some credits to people who have been very helpful for the project. Segura and many others who have helped develop the tool, my colleagues in the English department who have helped, the A.W. Mellon Foundation for funding, helping to fund projects like this. Thanks to Bayan and Fatima for contributing your research, and Dr. Wajdi for co-supervising with me. And colleagues at HBK University, to Dr. Malamalki, the dean of the college, and the faculty and staff who have created the first digital humanities program in the Middle East. So thank you.